I'm Emily Mashak, and you're listening to Tuned Into NoCo, Town Square Media's show that lets you know what matters in NoCo. I'm talking today with Heather Dimeris, the Deputy Associate Director for the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy with the Health Resources and Services Administration, about Telehealth.HHS.gov, a new resource that can help people learn about the benefits of telehealth and about how telehealth can benefit those in underserved rural and urban communities. So thank you so much for joining me today, Heather.
Hi, Emily. Thanks so much for having me on your show today. I'm excited to talk about the telehealth resources we have available to help patients get access to their doctor when they can't see them in person.
Of course. And now, how would you define what telehealth actually is, and how prevalent was it before the COVID-19 pandemic?
Sure thing. So telehealth really is a tool that doctors can use to provide healthcare services to their patients whenever the patient can't come into the clinic. And we know before the COVID-19 pandemic that telehealth was used mostly for rural and frontier areas when they couldn't get transportation to go into their doctor to receive specialty services. And as the COVID-19 pandemic really kind of unfolded and we needed to socially distance across the country and really the whole globe, the need for patients to receive care in their homes since the doctor's office was closed really helped be a catalyst for patients and doctors receiving and providing healthcare services via telehealth. So it really is a tool, just like we have a bunch of other tools in the healthcare industry, but this is a really important tool during the pandemic.
Right. And what are the benefits of telehealth care that you have seen since it's become so popular?
Sure. So I would say one of the areas that we knew was really strong even before the pandemic, but certainly during the pandemic has been incredibly important, is the mental health support. So receiving therapy over telehealth, whether you're just talking on the phone with your therapist or you can actually do a video chat, that has been shown to be highly effective, saves patient transportation, and helps the provider connect to the patient in the times of greatest need. And certainly during the pandemic, we've all experienced or had friends and family who experience anxiety or depression or other, just life-changing events that really can be helped by seeing a therapist.
Right. And so clearly telehealth has a lot of benefits, but would you say that telehealth care is just as viable of an option for healthcare as in-person care, or is in-person care preferable?
Well, you'll see on the new website we developed over the last year, Telehealth.HHS.gov, there are a bunch of resources both for patients and for providers. And what you'll see as you go through that site and as your listeners turn to it to get information, there are some things that can be provided through telehealth that have great patient outcomes and saves money and helps with that transportation piece. And then there are other things where we absolutely see in-person visits with that physical exam are needed, and telehealth can't possibly replace all healthcare because of that need for a physical exam in some situations. So it's really great to see that a variety of different things, including wellness visits, prescriptions, eye exams, you name it, can be done through telehealth. And then your doctor can decide whether there may need to be a physical examination where you come into the office.
Right. And would you be able to tell me more about telehealth.hhs.gov? How can our listeners use this tool?
Sure thing. Thanks so much for asking, Emily. So on the website, you'll see a door for patients, and then there's another door for providers. If you click on the door for patients, you will see a lot of information about how to access a doctor that provides telehealth services, what to do to prepare for a telehealth visit, and what some of the telehealth services are that you could receive. And then on the flip side, for the provider door, when a doctor walks into that or another healthcare provider, you can kind of click through and see a lot of resources around reimbursement and how to get paid for the services. Or if you're starting out and how to incorporate telehealth into your practice, you can click through there to see what tools and resources you can use to incorporate it. Or if you already have telehealth as a doctor in your practice, there may be new services that we list there as a best practice that you can add to your clinic and really expand your reach to patients through providing telehealth services.
And you already touched on how telehealth can be beneficial to those in rural or urban underserved communities, but how have you seen this tool really make an impact in these underserved communities?
We've seen over the past year and a half telehealth services spike with social distancing and then kind of come back down as people can go back into their doctor's office. But the rate at which patients are seeing their doctors over telehealth has continued to be higher than it was before the pandemic. And similarly, we've seen the people who've turned to Telehealth.HHS.gov spike early on in the pandemic, and then they continue to visit on both the doctors and patients alike to find more information. We've had over 1.6 million people visit the site to get information. So we see that continued desire to get more information around telehealth services on both patient and provider sites. I just really encourage your listeners to look at the site and understand, ways in which they can use telehealth services when they can't actually travel in to see their doctor in person.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing this information. I know a lot of our listeners will find it helpful, but I'm sure there are some out there who may not have health insurance or maybe don't have access to the internet. Are they still able to utilize the telehealth service?
Absolutely. So there are individuals, especially in rural frontier areas, that may not have access to high-speed internet through their cell phone or broadband service. And if they're able to access the telehealth.hhs.gov website through, local libraries, computer, they'll see different resources that they can turn to in order to get, especially if you're low income, a stipend to pay for broadband access or a cell phone so that you can have high-speed internet access. And that's available, like I said, through our website, but it is funded through a Federal Communications Commission program. And then likewise, if patients don't have access to health insurance, the healthcare.gov website, you can also link to that through telehealth.hhs.gov. But we have a marketplace with the U.S. Department of Health and Human Service, and that marketplace has been opened up for a special enrollment period to help Americans find affordable health insurance in the wake of COVID-19. And the good news is that it's perfect timing since the enrollment period is open until August 15th. And so if any of your listeners do need health insurance, they can turn to telehealth.hhs.gov, and it'll point you to the healthcare.gov marketplace.
Now, let's say a listener has gone to telehealth.hhs.gov and they've made their appointment. What do they need to do to prepare?
Sure. There are lots of different tips that we have online, but one of the most important things is checking your internet connection, making sure that you have good lighting. And some of the tips are similar to seeing a doctor in person. If you have, multiple questions for your doctor, just writing them down in advance. And having that with you whenever you're at your appointment. And I think for mental health services, there's an added layer, and it could apply to an appointment with your primary care provider too. But sometimes the treatment that we're getting in our home through telehealth is personal and confidential, and you may live with roommates or family members that you would rather have more of a private conversation with your doctor. So just thinking about all those things in advance so that you have a quiet place with good lighting, with good internet connections, that you're able to have a really effective and efficient appointment with your doctor. And all of those tips, if your listeners can't remember everything I said, they just have to remember the website, telehealth.hhs.gov, because it is all listed in there.
Well, thank you so much, Heather, for sharing this information. I know our listeners will find it all helpful. Is there anything else you would like listeners to know today?
I just want to thank you so much for the time to talk about telehealth and the website Telehealth.HHS.gov. I think it's a really great resource. And as the COVID-19 pandemic evolves and hopefully survives, I do think telehealth will evolve as well. And so it's a really good thing to begin to learn and understand, because we do see a lot of promise with it, and hope people take advantage of it.
Perfect. Well, again, it was great to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your time, Heather. Again, that was Heather Dimeris, the Deputy Associate Director for the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy with the Health Resources and Services Administration, talking about the benefits of telehealth. Learn more about how you can utilize telehealth at telehealth.hhs.gov.